U.S. officials have now told Senator Bernie Sanders that Russia is trying to help his presidential campaign. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Khanna of California. He's a national co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. I don't know if you heard what Senator Sanders just said a few moments ago, but let me play this little clip. Listen to this.
Let me tell Mr. Putin, the American people, whether you're Republicans, Democrats, Independents, are sick and tired of seeing Russia and other countries interfering in our elections. The intelligence community has been very clear about it. Whether Trump recognizes it or not, or acknowledges it or not, they did interfere in 2016. The intelligence community is telling us they are interfering in this campaign right now, in 2020. And what I say to Mr. Putin, if elected president, trust me, you are not going to be interfering in American elections.
All right, Congressman, as I said, you're a national co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign. Have you been briefed on Russia's efforts personally to help his campaign?
I have not personally been briefed, but the senator, my understanding, has been briefed, and he's made it very, very clear. It is completely unacceptable. We're going to stand up against it. He has supported, as all of us did in the House, a bill to stop Russian interference. Mitch McConnell has refused to move that legislation. We're going to continue to push for legislation to empower our law enforcement agencies to cooperate with tech to prevent this kind of interference.
He said he was briefed a month ago by U.S. intelligence law enforcement officials on the Russian effort, A, to interfere in the campaign, and B, to try to help his campaign, also clearly to try to help the Trump campaign. Why do you think it's remained quiet? Why didn't he come out publicly, Senator Sanders, and let his supporters, let everyone know?
He wants to make it clear that there's no interference, but I don't think he would be revealing what could have been a classified briefing. I don't think he would want to reveal that publicly. What he has made clear is that there's going to be no room for Russian interference, and he's been pushing to work with the Senate to actually get legislation done. And I also think social media companies have a bigger responsibility. They need to make it clear that they will remove any disinformation posts, that they will remove any posts from foreign actors.
Yeah, he issued a very tough statement, as we've been saying, and much in contrast to the reaction that we're getting from President Trump, who's also been told, and he dismisses it, that the Russians are trying to interfere to help his campaign. Why do you think, Congressman, Russia wants to help the Bernie Sanders campaign, let's say, rather than the campaigns of some of the other Democratic candidates?
I have no idea what motivates Vladimir Putin. I mean, he makes decisions that are dumb all the time, like annexing Crimea. All I can say is I think he wants to create the maximum level of confusion and division. Look, Russia is a has-been power. Their economy is in the dumps. They see the rise of China, and they are basically realizing that their only method of competing in the world, unfortunately, is sowing discord in other democracies. That's not going to work, and we need to clearly stand up to Putin and say this is unacceptable, and you're not going to endear yourself either to the United States or to Europe if you continue down this path.
Well, let me read to you something from the statement that Senator Sanders put out a little while ago. I'll read a quote. Some of the ugly stuff on the internet attributed to our campaign may well not be coming from real supporters. Do you believe, Congressman, the campaign has evidence that some of this online harassment we've all been reporting about, supposedly attributed to Bernie Sanders supporters, has really been coming from Russia?
I don't want to speculate on that because that would be going too far. What I will say is this. We have a responsibility in the Sanders campaign to live up to his ideals. No Sanders supporter should be bullying or harassing online. No one should be saying something that is making other people uncomfortable to participate as equals, and we need to be inclusive in our campaign. If there is interference, obviously we need to get to the bottom of that, but I don't want to speculate on something where we don't have hard evidence.
Yeah, well, this is basically the second time he's suggested, Senator Sanders, that maybe some of these ugly harassments coming from people supposedly supporting his campaign really, he doesn't say it hard, but he says maybe coming from the Russians. He's willing to go there, at least in part, but you're not.
Well, I think we can call for an investigation, I think I would trust the intelligence agencies, and I do think they ought to be looking at what the interference is. And are the Russians having bots online that are spreading misinformation or spreading hate? And I would defer to the intelligence agencies, as would Senator Sanders, and that is the big difference between him and President Trump. We believe in the intelligence agencies in this country. We believe they're professionals. We believe in their competence, and we will look at the facts. And ultimately, I think what Senator Sanders would want is for the intelligence agencies to look into this and who is causing the disinformation and what kind it is.
Yeah, clearly the Russians are still trying to sow political dissent, political turmoil here in the United States by doing what they did in 2016 and what they're apparently doing right now as well. Congressman Ro Khanna, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Wolf.
So that was Ro responding to the new story that's been circulating all over mainstream media that Sanders was briefed about Russian interference in the election to try to help his campaign. God, I'm telling you, sometimes people like to say that this cycle, just before we get into this clip, is different from 2016, but this was the narrative they had back then. Oh, the Russians were trying to prop up Sanders and also prop up Jill Stein and also prop up Trump and also prop up, because they were so scared of Hillary, and you know, it was just a dumb thing. And I mean, I think it's funny they call us the conspiracy theorists for having proof that they rigged the primary in the airwaves to be in favor of Clinton, but when we say that, when they say that Russia is trying to help out Sanders, then, you know, we're supposed to believe that it's all correct and true. But look, I love that he mentions the fact that Sanders has supported legislation to in favor of election security. It's been a Democratic effort, and that McConnell's blocking it, because I've been over the fact that McConnell has blocked multiple things the Democrats have done outside of impeachment, and that these idiots, referring to Democrats in general, played into his hands, because the impeachment thing was able to take away from the attention that they as a collective body should have placed on the fact that they were passing a bunch of bills and the Senate Majority Leader was doing nothing to stop the issue, was doing nothing to actually see the issue either get addressed via a vote in the Senate. And, you know, that was just him being a coward, that, you know, you have a Republican majority, so the stuff's probably not going to pass anyway, but you're too much of a prick to actually have it come up for a vote because you just feel like stalling bills. That was a nice little thing on his part to just keep it in circulation that McConnell is blocking this stuff. Democrats are actually trying to do something. It's not happening because of him. That was good. Also, that question by Wolf, Sanders, do you think he should have come out earlier and told his supporters about what was going on? How the hell are you going to blame the candidate for what Russia is doing? But more importantly, I just love how he tries to blame him for basically having to bear the burden of telling all these grown people who have the ability to look this stuff up. And I also like the nonsense that was circulating around. Well, don't you think that, you know, Sanders, do you believe what he's saying about some of his supporters possibly not actually being supporters, but posers by a foreign government? And really what that is that Sanders probably was trying to deflect from the fact that some of his supporters have said nasty things online. But all he has to do, and I'm saying this is one of his supporters, is just come out and say, I can't control what the people who are backing me say as a collective. I can come out and say, I don't agree with this. I don't condone it. But as far as, you know, me telling them, hey, don't call Buddha Trash a rat, or Clinton a snake, or, you know, any other animal, it's out of my control. And what sucks so much is that Roe says Sanders supporters should not be harassing people, do all this stuff, right? And that clip is not going to find itself in circulation amongst all the Twitter clowns who are talking about how ridiculous what do you call it, how he's just letting his fans attack people, and they're not doing anything to address it. You literally just had one of his campaign co-chairs come out and say, we don't approve of this. But again, they're going to keep that clip hidden so they can keep their narrative of the evil Sanders campaign allowing those supporters online to say whatever they want. I also love that Roe mentioned the fact that Russia annexed Ukraine. It's just because you never really hear when Russia gets mentioned with regard to U.S. in the United States. So dialogue about Russia in the U.S., it's usually just, they tried to interfere in the election. Putin got reelected. They tried to interfere in the election. It's always that one topic or something having to do with Putin. So I'm glad he actually mentioned something they did to another country, or to Ukraine rather, just to someone that's not the U.S., basically another entity in the world. It could have been a city, it could have been a country, just somewhere else. That was nice. I'd also like to point out that I've been very consistent in my view of supporters of candidates and how much they influence the campaign. So, for example, I was attacked by some Trump supporters in the years after he won and in the year prior to him winning. And I never once thought to say, these people act this way because of the rhetoric of Trump. The only time I ever blamed him for something that had to do with his supporters were two occasions. The first time was when he said he would pay the bills of people that tried to fight protesters that came to his rally, some kind of crazy stuff like that, where he tried to say that he would pay for it. The other one was when he claimed that he didn't know who David Duke was, which I don't believe, because that man has been famous for many, many decades, and Trump was around for each one of them. He could have just said, see, like any smart person, if they see some endorsement they don't like, they just say, I disavow this. I don't support this person. They're not on my team. And that would be it. But, you know, Trump was dumb enough to go, oh, I don't know if I don't think I've ever heard of this man. I don't know who he is. So with Russia, I'm glad Sanders came out forcefully. And that's another thing that's going to be frustrating to see them spin, because you have a clip of Sanders saying, I don't condone Putin getting involved on my behalf. Whereas Trump dismissed the idea of getting assistance from Putin to help with his campaign over the other ones. And you'll still have people that will write dumb things like in The Hill this week about how Trump and Sanders are the same for the parties because they are both older white males. Like, you just had a complete difference in reaction with regard to one over the other. And you're still going to write trash like that. And that's why a lot of us have the issue we have with the media, because it would be so easy for someone like Wolf Blitzer, Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, whoever you want to name, to take a clip of Trump being dismissive of Russia's involvement and a clip of Sanders, the one we just saw earlier in this video that they played on CNN that was subsequently played here, forcefully saying, I will not accept the support of this foreign government. We're sick of them interfering in our elections. They have no business doing this. They could play those two clips back to back. People would instantly get the difference, because people they do, I think, in a lot of cases, not look up stuff, which is why I'm getting 10 views. But if it's placed in their lap, I think most of them with actual evidence, right? So you have, in this case, about as best as you can, clips of these people saying opposite things. If they're played back to back, people can draw the conclusion of, okay, one is serious about doing something about this. The other one is just kind of being unconcerned, for lack of a more wanting term. So that's why we get mad at the media. Well, that's one of the reasons why we get mad, that they have the power to do something such as that, choose not to, and the misinformation keeps going. You know, Sanders, he just won Nevada. And the day before he wins Nevada, this story pops off. It's playing on Fox, literally as he's being confirmed to have won that state today. Or yesterday, rather, because it's Sunday morning. And I'm supposed to believe that that's not a coincidence. But again, if we point out that that information came, and it's been like this with Iowa too. Oh, Sanders is polling high. Oh, coincidentally, we're going to have a recount that, as he becomes the person winning the popular vote, decides to, take several days to count out, to where those days he could have had of extra press coverage from being the winner of the first in the nation state get diminished. So like too much stuff conveniently pops off, and we're increasingly told to not look at it and say, hey, wait a second, that doesn't sound right given what we know, or given what occurs right next to it. A day before we have Nevada, where Sanders was polling very, very high, you get an article or a series of news stories about him getting help from the Russians in his campaign. Again, I'm not saying they purposely tried to make it seem as if he was seeking it, but that story coming out the day before that state has its primary, I think people could see where one would believe it was meant to discourage people in Nevada from voting for him. It didn't work, but again, there's too many just coincidences, and that's something I wish that Roe would mention, because Kyle in his recent video on Roe mentioned how he's this more moderate advisor to Sanders. He could come out and say, look, I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but it is fact this story came out a day before this primary. It seems too oddly timed. It was the same thing I would say about the Me Too people, that, oh, this one actor comes back to make a movie. Now 10 people are saying he touched him. What a coincidence. Again, it's just, my point is, you have to look at the timing of things and also factor that in. If it looks like Trump is going to win, I don't know, the election, we got all these polls showing that he's in first place, and then the day before I put out a story saying Trump met with Putin so that whatever the election results are, they're going to be in his favor because he found a way to change the votes. That would appear very suspicious to come out right before the election. So I hope my point is being made here. It was a nice clip, and I hope that we see more of it. Roe is a great advisor to Sanders, and he's just a good politician.